What is up, everybody? We are coming today. This is a new week. I lose track of this stuff. I think I'm at like episode 26 now, and I'm pretty impressed with myself that I've kept this going. So today we have Mr. Albert Coritz, correct? Coritz. Okay. For those of you that don't know, he is the deadly beautiful zoological keeper, Viper Keeper on YouTube. I have followed for a long time because when you get on YouTube and years back, search Venomous, this is all we had. So amazing channel, great videos. I love the non-scripted, just go at it. Probably, I will say my favorite videos were the early Elvis days where he would get out of the cage and kind of chase you around the room for food. Those are some of my favorites. So Al, if you want to just kind of go ahead and give everybody just a quick who you are and what you do, and then we'll go ahead and get into this.
Sure. I've been keeping venomous snakes since 1974. I did stop for a while when my kids were very young because, kids are very inquisitive, and it's not a good idea to have, it's just like leaving. Well, the analogy is sort of like leaving a loaded gun on the table. Kids get into trouble with those. But in the case of venomous snakes, the gun sitting on the table is not going to come after you. The venomous snake could potentially do that. Child opens the cage door and you have a big problem. The number one rule here at Viper Keeper's Lair is they're my animals. I'm the only one that's allowed to take a bite. My wife, Lori, is an integral part of this, helps me out with the videos, helps me out with husbandry. I have well, I don't know if I would call him an apprentice, but I have an assistant that I'm teaching the ropes to. I've been doing videos on YouTube since I think around 2005. I think I was the first, and I think also I've done it the best out of everybody. There's a lot of copycats and a lot of people which I would just call specifically showmen, and nothing more. To me, the whole idea doing the YouTube videos to start was to share some of these rare animals with people who either weren't able to keep them for whatever reason or were frightened of them. And I gave what I believe accurate comment. Everything is totally unscripted. It's not rehearsed. Things happen the way they happen. Sometimes they don't happen for good reasons, but for the most part, things are very safe here at the lair when my wife and I are filming for a video. So in real life, I've been a scientist all my life. I am an electron microscopist by trade with a degree in cell biology. I work for a company now that sells accessories and equipment and supplies for the entire field of microscopy, which spans material sciences, biological sciences, medical sciences. I did clinical pathology microscopy at Yale School of Medicine when I was starting out. And then I moved to industry where I've been since 1986. So I kept my first exotic snakes in the early 80s when I was living in Connecticut and at Yale. My first and foremost love were gaboon vipers. So I got my first gaboon viper way back then. But as I said, I've been keeping venomous snakes since 1974, but all domestic venomous snake, copperheads, timber rattlesnakes, other rattlesnakes from the area.
Okay. So I just, maybe a year ago now that we've moved out here to Orlando, I worked with Cody Bartolini at the Reptile Preservation Institute and did my internship there to get my hours to keep venomous. So we waited until we were really ready to do what we really wanted to do. And I did the same thing you said years ago. I wanted to keep venomous, but my kids were young. So it just wasn't something that we were willing to take any chances or risks with. So we waited. My youngest son now is 16. A lot of times I tell people, we go into a pet store and I would guarantee that he would know almost more than anybody in there because he focuses a lot of his time working with us, watching YouTube videos, learning, asking questions, using Google. So that's what we did. I just got my VRC permit 3 weeks ago. I finally got it after a year of waiting due to COVID. And, obviously we don't want to rush. This isn't something you rush into. So, we kind of held off and waited. So we were just talking off camera about some of the things that are happening in the industry right now. And for those people that watch, everybody knows I'm very passionate and I despise free handling. That's me for me. Guys, you know it. I tell people all the time, it's like handling a loaded gun. If you come into my house, I've got a handgun sitting on my nightstand. If you grab that gun, put it to your head and pull the trigger, I guarantee you're going to have a couple extra holes. They're always loaded, just like these animals behind me and the ones behind you. They're always loaded. There's no yes or no. It's a yes. So what do you see this current climate with the venomous right now? Because you were kind of alluding to some stuff before.
As I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I work with a lot of zoos and venom labs. I used to sell a number of animals to individuals, but I don't do that anymore so much, mostly because
people suck.
People will just not, they'll spend $1,000 on a leucistic monocle cobra, but they won't buy a proper cage to house the animal in, and they won't take the time to learn about the husbandry of the animal. And certainly they won't purchase their own supply of antivenom, which is not difficult to do. It's just some paperwork.
Time and paperwork.
Yeah, it's all paperwork, and you just have to get your doctor to sign off on it. And I founded and own sort of National Snakebite Support group on Facebook, where I actually have 3 very talented medical toxicologists, including Ben Abo of Venom One, to actually help people who are bitten in the United States by mostly domestic bites. Occasionally, there's some exotic bites, but for the most part, if it's not difficult to obtain your own antivenom. A matter of fact, I've got a fresh shipment of Thai Red Cross hemotoxic antivenom that should arrive here tomorrow, because in the past, I guess I did the right thing, but I consider myself foolish for doing it. Is someone got bit, I supplied my personal supply of antivenom to treat the bite, and not only did I not receive the money back per vial that I provided, but I didn't even get a thank you from the person. Wow. So I have antivenom here for virtually everything that I keep in-house. I may not have enough to treat a bite because you never know how bad it's going to
Yeah,
be.
exactly.
But I have a damn good starter dose of everything, which buys you time to get a resupply from, Venom 1, for instance.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of zoos are turning bite victims down and
Yep.
saying, sorry, you're out of luck. This has happened in Texas recently with a monocle cobra bite. San Antonio Zoo, I think, was the San Antonio Zoo, said, no, we need to keep the SAM here for our people. Look elsewhere. So, I tell people all the time, it's one thing to get bit by one of these beautiful blue insularis behind me. You can probably ride that out. However, if you get bit by a taipan, which a lot of people keep, and you don't go to the hospital with your own supply of antivenom, you're leaving the hospital probably in a day or so in a body bag.
Yep.
It's just irresponsible.
Yeah, exactly.
I have, well, these 3 cages are death adders. The taipans are in the other room. But I have my own supply of antivenom that I keep.
Yep.
You also notice that these are all professional grade caging, just
Yep.
like you have restrictions in Florida.
Yep.
And by the way, I have a coral cobra I got from Cody. It's
Nice.
Reproduced, and I've got some offspring left.
Yep.
Great. Cody does amazing work. He's a really good guy.
Yep.
But everything in here is in professional grade caging. Yes, there are no locks on the cage, but my wife
They're
and
secure.
I here, the door is locked to the room.
Mhm.
The room is secure, so even if an adult snake got out of the cage, which is very unlikely, it can't possibly leave the room, because before I turned this into a snake room, I went and I foamed every little crack and crevice I could. This is an old floor. Were some knot holes in it. I pounded some cork in it and RTV'd over them.
Mm-hmm.
So I made the room essentially as snake proof as possible. Snakes are great escape artists.
Oh yeah.
Usually if something gets out, it's from one of the bins. Well, it's a baby.
Yeah.
Usually they don't go very far. But it's unconscionable to have a situation where your zebra cobra gets loose in the community.
For months.
Unconscionable to have your West African forest cobra get loose in the community. And I'll tell you exactly what will happen. If this forest cobra out in Texas bites an innocent person, there will be federal legislation banning private keeping of venomous snakes in every state of the union, which I don't think is a good thing for a couple of reasons. One, just like there are people who don't think the laws apply to them, there will be people that will keep stuff under the table. Even in Florida, occasionally you see Fish and Wildlife bust people that are keeping without a proper permit.
Yep.
So driving it underground is really not the way to do it. I would really like to see, a system like Florida has instituted in the remaining states, or any of the states that currently you can keep venomous snakes in. But everything will come to an end if people don't keep their animals in properly secure rooms and in properly secure cages. And on top of that, if you keep your own antivenom supply, usually it doesn't hit the media, because you can get to the hospital with your antivenom, have your own personal venom doc, make a relationship with your local ER, tell them what you got, tell them what you're doing. See Joe Pittman at the Florida Snakebite Institute, get a binder of bite protocols to take with you, and which includes his contact information.
Yep.
And, if you're going to do it, you do it correctly. Otherwise, don't, because you're harming yourself, you're harming the venomous community, and you could be harming your neighbor.
Yep. So for those of you watching right now, shaking your head going, well, I don't even know where to start. The permit is a BBIND. If you Google FDA 1571 or FDA 1572, you will pull up the forms for the IND. You do need your doctor to sign off on it. There are steps that you have to take. Kristen Wiley from the Kentucky Reptile Zoo has a great form that she sends out when people ask for the information. It kind of walks you through some of it. There are a few other people that can help with the permitting or help go over what needs to be filled out. What I think Al is alluding to is we have a responsibility to ourselves, our families, our community, and the reptile community. This is a big deal. These are not toys. That's what irks me the most when people take these animals out because they want to show somebody something. There is an eighth of an inch of glass in most cases between you and that animal. If you need to see something closer than that, go get your eyes checked, please.
Yeah, the rules are, and I very seldom have visitors here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story. I stopped mentoring people for a while, and the reason was that I was working with a young kid. We were doing something. I needed to leave the room to get something. I said, take any photos you like, just don't open any of the cages. And I came back a few minutes later. We just continued on what we're doing. That evening on his Facebook page, there was a whole bunch of pictures from my facility with the cage doors open. So that was his last time at my facility.
Yep.
So there's an amount of trust that's involved. And if you remember, I don't know if you remember, a few years back in Germany, someone had a guest in the snake room. The guest opened the door and was bitten by a neotropical rattlesnake that he had, and the guy passed before they could find antivenom for him.
Ouch.
So, you know, this is not a, this is not a game we play with these animals. No. Even Lori and I are reluctant, or when I have my assistant here, the only time animals come out of the cage is if the cage needs to be cleaned or the animal needs some sort of vet procedure done, because I don't have a real vet I can take the animals to. Since I do business with zoos, I have access to zoo herp vets that help me out. I can get the medications that are needed. I can get, since I'm, essentially a medical worker, I can, take blood samples. I can take, culture swabs. So I can do it right. But no animal comes out just for the fun of it, for the most part. Okay, so if the gaboon viper needs its cage cleaned, the easiest way to do that, because it's a 6-foot gaboon from Sierra Leone. I found this rather large fang in her cage. Sierra Leone is known for the largest gaboon vipers in West Africa. A lot of times I will let it come out of the cage because on its own, or I'll hook it out on the floor. It's not interested in bothering with me. It's better than throwing it into a bin because you can easily break their spine because they're so large. Yeah. With Elvis, the king cobra, the easiest thing I can do is just let him come out in the room. He doesn't want anything to do with me. I stand watch while my assistant changes the substrate and cleans the cage. And then, I hook Elvis back in the cage. But other than that, these animals don't come out for show and tell. If you look at my videos, very rarely will you see me holding a hook and having a snake pointing at the camera. the number one thing, my hallmark is these videos are not about me. They're about the animals, natural history, and why these animals are so special, and why their venom is so important to science. And my friends at the Kentucky Reptile Zoo and other venom labs that I work with, these venoms have produced a number of important drugs that save human lives.
Yep.
So I try to share what I have with people. I try to propagate some of the animals, mostly now for zoos and the ones that have important venoms, like for instance, the Russell's vipers I have. I had, about 14 or 16 of them born. I sent all of them except for 4 to the Kentucky Reptile Zoo because their venom is used in a medical test for lupus.
Okay.
So it's an important venom. So I may breed some animals. The blue insularis are low enough in toxicity level that if you can tell me, if you can give me a few references that I can check up on you, I will probably sell you a Trymosaurus.
Yeah.
I would never sell you anything more toxic than that.
Yep.
And I check people's ID to make sure that they live in a state where it's not illegal. I've gone and I've tried to tell the promoters at the shows here in Pennsylvania, look, you need to police the vendors. They need to do their due diligence on who they're selling to, because, there's a couple of, people come from New York, New Jersey, and Maryland to the shows here, and it's all about the dollar. Yeah. People will indiscriminately sell animals to a person who shouldn't really have the animal, and certainly shouldn't be keeping it in a cage with a screen top.
Yeah, that's so I started working with Cody, and in my mind, I thought, well, he breeds rats. So I'm probably, until we really get to know each other, I'm probably going to be doing the grunt work, and you gotta learn.
I'm sorry, your audio is a little weak.
Is it? Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Let me move the mic a little bit. Is that better?
No, still can't hear you. Stand by one.
Yep.
Okay, I shut the AC off.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
That's a little better. I can hear you. You can probably hear me better. Yeah, the rooms, the air conditioning, even though we're here in Pennsylvania, run 24/7. So the whole idea behind my husbandry concept is I keep the room stable with temperature and humidity, and then I produce microclimates in each enclosure. I've got misting systems for the tropical snakes. I've got heat panels. Some have basking lights.
Yeah, I copied your misting system.
Huh?
I copied your misting system. If you could see the 5-gallon bottle, all little pumps. I went on Amazon and found what looked like Mist King nozzles, and then I found the little bulkheads that go in. So I have the bulkhead, and then the mister plugs into that. So this way it's secure. It's not just hanging through the screen. So what I was saying before is, as I worked with Cody, and the very first things that he taught me were one, you don't ever lean on top of a cage. You never put your hand on top of anything, and for good reason. And 2, we don't take any animals out for anything other than, like you said, a medical procedure or to clean the enclosure. And if you're cleaning the enclosure, it's cage to can to cage, and that's it. If you want to take a picture in the can, that's fine. If you want to take a picture in the cage, do it with the door closed. It's safe. It's
well, it's safe. It's prudent. I mean, these are not like corn snakes and stuff. there are serious consequences to an envenomation, not only to yourself, but to the entire hobby.
Yeah.
I've been envenomated twice in my career since 1974 to date. And the first time was a timber rattlesnake when I was 17. And of course, when you're young, you think you know it all and such. Well, yeah, I got taught a lesson that I did not forget. The second time was a black mamba bite that, okay, so I have this theory. Wild caught animals fear people more than captive born animals do. Because the black mamba involved was not wild caught. It was hatched here, and I knew it for its entire existence. So it had absolutely no fear of me. And if you will go back and you watch the video Dancing with Death, that's the black mamba that bit me. And it was actually one of these, it was smaller. It wasn't big. It was about three foot. It was just the size where I was going to transition it to a bigger cage. And I came in one evening and it had defecated. And of course, you know, I have long-handled scoopers and stuff. So I had a hook in one hand and the scooper in the other, and I swung open the door. I don't know if you can see it, but each door has a loop where you can stick the hook so you can open it. So I opened it, and it was sitting in the back corner of the cage, and I was watching it, and I scooped, and it launched itself, and it caught me in the chest. But again, it's very good to have your own antivenom because I didn't need to call an ambulance. I just yelled down to my wife to put the Samir in the cooler that I got bit by the black mamba. And we went off to the ER and I received a few vials of Samir. And 2 hours later, I was perfectly fine and wanted to come home. But of course, they didn't let me come home.
Yeah, they're going to keep you there.
But you have to have emergency procedures set up. We have all of our contact numbers. We have bite protocols. We have antivenom that's all labeled for the number of different species. But
accidents happen.
These are no joke animals.
Accidents happen, everybody, and I love seeing videos from people that say, "Oh, I grabbed my ball python and it bit me." Oh, I've been bitten by ball pythons a million times. I've been bitten.
Who hasn't?
Yeah, I've been bitten by some pretty big retics, which by no means is that a badge of honor. It's all stupidity on my part. Just me not thinking and becoming complacent with that. So you look at now and procedures and what do we do? And I work in nutraceuticals. I'm a food safety and sanitation manager, and I am part of the safety team. So we do things in our company that is very redundant. We have a process, somebody verifies it, somebody else verifies that it was verified, and then it gets signed off on. And I always laugh and say, man, we do things that are crazy. And as I prepped all my cages and everything, I started thinking, you know, I see why we do this. Because if I'm in the room and I'm moving a snake around and I get a phone call and I've got things pretty much situated and I take that call because maybe it's an emergency, and then I walk out of the room and I come back. What if I didn't latch a cage? What if I just became complacent? So we put a process in place here that, first of all, nobody works anything alone in the house, no matter what. We all have animals here. From my son to my wife, we all have animals. Nobody works anything alone. Doesn't matter what it is. My youngest son is 16. He can't drive yet. So I fight back and forth with, do I work stuff with him here? What if something happens? He can't drive. So my older son, my daughter, my wife need to be here. But when we're finished in here, I've got a form. Every cage is listed on there. Whoever wasn't in the room working will come back in and go through and check off and say, hey, everything is locked. I don't have 200 snakes. I have 6. So it's easy to do that. So for me, it makes sense because I just don't know what if. There's always an accident. Accidents happen. We're all humans.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've never been, again, I've done 960 published videos. I was never bitten in while filming or doing any of those videos. The mamba bite was off camera, just doing normal husbandry. And it wasn't even complacence. It was surprise.
Yeah.
You know, I keep saying this, but sometimes you lose sight of it, even the best of us.
Yeah.
The general rule is, you know, always expect the unexpected from the snake. You know, people, you know, marvel at the picture of that puff adder going airborne. I've seen baboon vipers come back over their back and almost touch their tail. And I see people free handling them.
Yeah, yet some of these guys are holding them in their arms like this.
Yeah. You know, okay, so the famous video that people say, look, he's a free handler. Well, you know, I was working Elvis in the cage over here when he was about 5 or 6 feet long and easier to contain. And I opened the cage to feed him, and I was sort of crouched down, and Lori was over here filming, and he came out, raised, looked me right in the face about 1.5 feet away, and then came straight at my face. So I reached out and snatched him just like, you know, Bill Haast would. And people will post that and say, see, Coritz is free handling. No, I just saved my life.
Yeah.
Because he would have bit me in the face.
There's a difference between free handling foolishly and protecting yourself and having the experience and the knowledge and the know-how to potentially save your own life.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, Elvis, I know what buttons not to push with him. I've had him since he's hatched in 2010. I know when he's messing around and not serious, but I also know when he's very serious. You know, the video that I put up, Elvis, the Rampage edition, that was, he wasn't serious. He was just playing around. Yeah. He's literally, went at his present size of 14 feet. He's literally chased me from one end of this room to the other. I was feeding him. He missed the rat on the end of the tongs, and then he decided that I was the target. And I had to fend him off with the tongs. He cornered me there. I jumped over him. I ran to the other corner, and the chair I'm sitting on, I sweeped him like a lion tamer to the side and ran to the other room. And the watering can tumbled to the floor and caught his attention, and that broke off the attack. But, you know, he's a no joke snake too. And that's why you don't see him very often anymore, because the only time that he really comes out is when the cage gets cleaned and, you know, I have some assistance. I don't even open the door very much to hand him the rat anymore, because he has just reached a much more dangerous level. My mambas, my taipans are certainly easier and safer to work with than a 14-foot king cobra.
Yeah, I've actually heard that from other people, that some of these bigger kings are extremely dangerous. They're very smart. They're very fast.
Well, that's part of the thing is they are very smart, and Elvis knows me well enough that he's not so difficult to handle when there's no food around. But when they get that feeding response, they become totally uncontrollable. As I always tell people, look, you can take the animal out of the wild, but you can never get the wild out of the animal. And this is the case. If he's in a feeding response, he's a very dangerous snake. If I open the cage and I hit him with one of these spray bottles of water in the face, it breaks his concentration. He knows that it's not a feeding event, and he calms down and is very easy to handle. And that's the trick I use with a lot of the snakes, because a lot of the snakes get conditioned. When you open that door, they expect food a lot of times. So if you have to service the cage or something else, I use the spray bottle as something to break their focus on food, because even the tropical snakes, the jararacas I have right over here, that are in Brazil, they live in a rainforest. They don't like getting water in their face. So that sort of throws them off and makes them a lot easier it breaks that feeding response. And that's really the most dangerous part of keeping your snakes, is the feeding response. Yeah. You know, the intro to all my videos, those were all feeding responses. Those snakes that I opened those doors, they were expecting food. It makes for spectacular footage, but it's highly dangerous. And, you know, I've done this long enough that, you know, I don't really need to do the crazy stuff. You know, that just sort of happened along the way. It wasn't really done on purpose, but I stitched all those together to make my intro, because, you know, this sort of excitement sells on YouTube. And, you know, if you're just talking about an animal and, you know, just giving people facts, they're not so excited about it. They want to see the showman, which I prefer not to be the star. The animals are the star. They're quite unique. I've been fortunate enough to keep about 39 genera, about 80 or so species of venomous snakes. There's 325 species. So I am nowhere near complete on my list. I've bred lots of them. Some I don't breed anymore because, to be honest with you, breeding the taipans, the last batch of babies I had lots of trouble finding homes for, where the animals would be well cared for, which is number one. Number two, they would be handled and cared for in a safe manner. And three, the people, you know, had experience and access to antivenom. But so I don't breed them anymore. A lot of the animals I breed right now pretty much are for, you know, antivenom production. I don't extract from snakes myself. Occasionally, my friend and colleague Brian Fry, if I come up with a rare snake and he doesn't have a sample of venom, I'll extract one time from that animal to provide him a venom sample for his research and stuff. I'll do that with any investigator. Doug Hodel, when he was with the Natural Toxins Resource Center with Elda Sanchez, we did the characterization of Vitis parviocula venom and whether or not Samir would be effective. That's a publication that I supplied the parviocula venom for. So, you know, these sort of things actually help the hobby, because it lets the clinician know if a bite occurs, you can use this antivenom and know that it will have some effect. So I really think that the hobby's dying. And I think it's dying because people really can't go to a town meeting or a state legislature and give them a valid reason why you should be allowed to keep this animal. especially, it's not like a firearm. Like I said, the firearm will sit on the tabletop. It won't bother anybody unless you bother it. These are live animals. They're mobile. If they get out in the community, like it did in Texas and like it did in North Carolina, you have absolutely no leg to stand on, and they'll legislate that out of existence, which would be a real shame because there's a lot of talented people out there, you know, that keep and breed, you know, rare species of venomous snakes. I may perhaps be able to get grandfathered in because I provide zoos and venom labs and stuff, but that's still no guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the sad fact is unless we all smarten up and understand that we can't you should never take exotic reptiles outside, first and foremost.
Oh no.
And but all these people, listen, right after this kid in North Carolina, I stumbled across the video on YouTube, and this guy's got it looks like an 8 or 9 foot forest cobra, a big one, and his grass is 3 feet long, and he's outside. And of course, I post on the video and say, "Hey, you're in North Carolina. You do know what's going on, right? This is not a good idea." "Oh, I know my snake. I know it." "Really? You do?"
See, this is part of the problem. You know, if you're a vocal advocate for safe keeping and handling like myself, and you go to these shows and you talk to the promoter and say, look, you have to talk to your vendors. They need to make sure that the snake they're selling goes into the right hands, and not just an exchange of money and snake. Otherwise, this is doomed. This will go away. It will hurt your business also. But I'm the bad guy then.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you know, I've had enough. You know, like I said, I will probably be able to still keep it once it becomes legal because of my ties, and you know, I can get testimonials from a number of zoos and venom labs that I'm responsible. I certainly am responsible. I have my own antivenom supply, but it's the others that are going to suffer. And USARC can only do so much. Again, they go and argue in court, but there's really no justification for you to keep venomous snakes. There is no Second Amendment for the venomous snakes.
And the funny thing is these free handlers will say that they have all this justification for doing it. Oh, I know my animal. It's never going to bite. I can tell by its body. Blah blah blah. Whenever I approach somebody and that conversation comes up, I always say, "Tell me why you should do that. Give me a reason that's legitimate that you should be free handling that animal." And I've never had anybody respond. The responses I've gotten were, "It's my animal. I'll do whatever I want." Okay.
That's typical. You never know the animal. Like I said, Elvis can be a pussycat when there's no food around. And could I free handle him? Absolutely. But is it worth the risk? Absolutely not. Thud, the big water cobra behind me, he's a pussycat unless there's food there. You could easily free handle him. I don't, because I don't want to take a bite. I don't want to end up at the ER. I don't want to, you know, have horse serum injected into me with the antivenom. There's too many risks involved, and the benefits are not worth it. I am, you know, I'm really sort of, you know, a bit embarrassed at my YouTube fame. You know, people come up to me and, oh, can I get a picture, or can you autograph this? And I do it because I'm a good guy and they're a good fan and stuff. But inside, I'm like, I'm just a regular guy. I am just fortunate enough to be able to have these animals. And I'm very happy to share my experience with them and show you some things that you don't normally get to see.
Here's the thing,
Um,
Al, and I agree with that, and I disagree with it because here's the thing: you do it right, you educate, you show people things that listen. 90% of people are never going to see these animals, even in the zoo. How many times do you go in and you can't really get a good look at something? So what's better than that? I can sit in my living room with my 70-inch TV and I can watch you feed the animals, talk about them, tell stories about where they're from, how they eat, what they eat in the wild, what they do. If you're a geek like that, like I geek out to some of that stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, I do. But if you get into that stuff, like I love hearing the stories that Cody tells about years of working with certain animals and being able, he went to Guatemala and finding, yellow blotch palm vipers, finding Arifer in the wild. I love hearing that stuff. What's cooler than that? I'm sorry, I don't get off on somebody holding their white cobra, shaking it around in their face like an idiot. That doesn't do anything for me.
yeah, yeah, no. And you know what the most rewarding part is when I get emails from people that say or send me a picture of their little kids sitting in front of the TV watching one of my YouTube videos, or saying, this is the best part, or saying, I was deathly afraid of snakes until I started to watch your videos, and now I'm perfectly okay with them. I understand their place on the planet.
Yep.
It's unfortunate that sometimes people encounter them and get bit, but they're here for a purpose, and I'm no longer frightened.
Yep. I
And
always tell
to
people
me,
when
that's a win. That's a win for the hobby.
I always tell people when they say things about Brian Barczyk and talk about how bad he is for the hobby, I always tell them, stop. Think about what you're saying. For somebody like me that's been doing this for over 20 years, watching Brian's videos, unless it's something I'm really interested in, it's very rudimentary to me. But for somebody new that's afraid of snakes, Brian does a great job at explaining what they are, how they work, handling them, being excited about it, and teaching those people that those animals aren't bad. And that's what we need to focus on. There's so much focus on the bad stuff that we forget about all the good stuff.
Yeah, this is true. So, we try to promote, that sort of thing here.
Mm-hmm.
We try to portray the animals so they're not so big and scary. A lot of them are cute. A lot of them, they know me. I'm the guy that brings food. So usually most of the work takes place on the weekend. So if I'm away on a job for work, my wife will say, oh, the snakes know that it's getting close to feeding day because they're coming out of their hides and they're sitting up front in the cage. Um, they they behave differently for me than they do for her. She doesn't necessarily. She feeds some of the smaller, easier going animals. Basically the bothrops and any of the elapids, for the most part, she has nothing to do with. She'll work the Angolan garter snakes because they're, small and very shy and fossorial. The baby coral cobras that are from Cody's lineage, those guys are a little bit wacky. She doesn't go in that cage because they're a little tough to control. Their feeding response is dangerous, but mostly to themselves. I've got some pictures on the phone where they actually, the silly male ended up biting and holding on to his own butt, his junk. But yeah, when I'm away, the only thing that she really sort of does is make sure that water dishes are topped off, and that's pretty much it. And only with certain cages. And if I need, if I'm away and well, my apprentice and I have another person that I mentored, they live close by. Well, they can come by and handle the little bit more trickier situations than my wife is comfortable with. So, there's always a backup, just like you said.
Yep.
You know, you have a procedure. Whenever we do something in the room, the last thing we do is we check and make sure every cage is closed. Every cage has a stick in it. The sticks serve two purposes. One, when we walk on the floor, the windows rattle and it's a bit annoying. But number two is the snakes can't push the glass and slide the glass. And you know, from big constrictors, they can do that.
Oh yeah.
I used to have locks and keys, but again, we're the only one in here. The room, the snakes, even if they could get out of their cage, cannot make it out of the room because it is truly quite snake proof. I've been in this facility for 11 years now. No one's gotten out of the cage, and you know, I am absolutely certain that no one could get out of the room or the other two rooms that we have. Another one is across the hall. It has more drier, arid species. This is sort of the more humid room, but I am misting in some of the cages over there because, believe it or not, desert snakes do enjoy drinking water once in a while.
Absolutely.
I just did a nice little video segment of a young Bitis quadalis that I have, a horn puff adder. She had just shed and she came up to the front of the cage when I opened it. And, you know, you've seen it plenty of times. I have these laboratory wash bottles and I was just dripping water in her mouth and she was enjoying it. And, you know, I have that relationship with a lot of the animals. Some I can do that to, others I can't. Slinky, the Jameson Mambas, will drink quite readily from the squeeze bottle. You just have to approach slowly and, you know, you sort of have to let him know what you're there for and what you're doing. But, you know, I've had Slinky since 2005. He's a pussycat. He used to come out all the time, would eat on the tabletop here for videos. He would, you know, he would climb on the hook, go back into his cage after he ate. You know, certain snakes, like certain inmates at prison, get certain privileges. Yep. Other snakes I would never consider taking out because, for instance, the Bothrops. You know, Bothrops are notorious for a good reason. They've earned it, and you touch them, you can hook them once and put them down, but the second time you lay the hook on them, they will go off like a rocket. And those are very dangerous snake. You know, Austin Stevens did a series, and you know, he called Bothrops asper the ultimate pit viper, and he's absolutely correct. I have a 6-foot Bothrops asper, and a lot of my very dangerous snakes, I have trap boxes in the cages. And I don't service her cage unless she's in the trap box and secure, because she is a handful. You know, these snakes, these are their homes. Okay, so what I've always tried to tell people is you think like a snake when you're working with them as best you can. What if someone came into your home and tried to drag you out of your home? You wouldn't react so well. So each of these cages are that particular snake's home. So you have to take that into account when you're servicing the cage, that you're dragging an animal out of its home and it's going to be unhappy and not react well to it. And that's why if a snake grows to the point where it gets upgraded to another cage, I move some of its furniture to that cage that has their scent on it to make them feel a little bit more comfortable in their facility, their new cage. And sometimes you know, I don't understand the keepers that every week they drag their snake out of their cage to clean the substrate. you know, a lot of the snakes in my collection, if I disturbed them on a regular basis like that, they would permanently go off feed.
Yeah.
I had some young baby water cobras. I'll tell you the story just to illustrate this fact. Um, they they started off in these small bins across the way here.
Yeah.
They're like, 12 by 6 bins. Um, they're feeding on pinks that I just drop in their water bowl, and they eat them right out of the water bowl because water cobras eat in the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
They outgrew those. I moved them across the way to the larger bins, and they outgrew those. And if a snake has outgrown its bin, you want to make sure that it's safe for you to work with that animal in that bin because you don't want it launching out on you. So they outgrew the bin. So I moved them to one of the Vision 211s over here, and I set them up. I moved their furniture. They were eating fine in the bins across the way. Uh, every week they'd eat, 5 fuzzies right out of the dish, no problems at all. I moved them into these cages. For 2 months, I couldn't get them to eat because it was a change of venue for them. And I even moved some of their furniture, as I call it. But it was so traumatic to them. I ended up moving them back to the bins. Very next feeding cycle on the weekend, they ate their pinkies right out of the water dish. So you shouldn't be pulling these out and disturbing the animals on a regular basis. They prefer to be left alone. When the cages get dirty, you spot clean the best you can. Every 3 months, everybody gets a substrate change. But that's, I'm in trouble here. Yeah, the room lights and everything are on a timer and stuff. So I hit that timer. So I can regulate their day-night cycle. Because now the night shift is going to come out that you don't normally see, especially the bothrops, the ones that will hide during most of the day. They'll come out. Certain snakes that I've had forever, like Slinky, he doesn't care. He just hangs out. Yeah. When he's in shed, he'll go into his trap box, and that's usually when I'll clean his cage and stuff. But it's also good to have an emergency light in your snake room if the power actually goes out. If power didn't go out, just the timers went off. My emergency light didn't go on because I sort of learned that lesson the hard way. I was treating one of the male white speckled rattlesnake that I had that gave birth to a whole bunch of babies. It got bit by the female in the cage, and it developed a large hematoma on the top of its head. Okay. Well, Lori was helping me treat the snake. We tubed it. I backed it out of the tube, was holding it, and I actually, had to stick a sterile needle in and aspirate out the serosanguinous fluid to reduce the pressure and stuff. And in the middle of that procedure, the lights in the room went out, and the emergency light didn't come on because the battery had failed. So it's important to check your batteries just like your smoke detector batteries. Yep. But it was like, oh my God, I'm in the dark. I'm holding, treating it. This is a bad situation. But fortunately, Laurie just opened the door, and like I just did, went up and turned the switch on manually. And we've got flashlights and stuff in the room too. So, all this is important.
I keep a headlamp it's hanging right there. I have an emergency light that is, it's over there. But one of the things I did because of this cage right here, it sits in front of the light switch, and I come into the room one day and I open the door up, and this door over here is the closet. The door for the room is over here. And I open the door up and I retch my hand behind there and flip the light on, and I thought, what if something got out? That's a great place for it just to be hanging out. And I'm sticking my hand back there and I can't see anything. It's dark. So I actually put a motion sensing light in. So now as soon as you open the door, the lights come on in here. So a lot of times I'll be in here doing a show. I just manually shut the light off because it'll be on and then it'll go off and it looks weird. So that light only comes on now. The main light in the room only comes on when you activate that switch. So this way I can push the door open and see that there's nothing on the floor in front of it, and I know everything is good.
Yeah, I have to tell you that you're absolutely correct. We always are very cautious when we open the door to the snake room. And I don't know if you can see it, but right by the door,
Yep.
hanging right by the door,
Oh, that's a good idea.
I have a hook, so I can immediately grab a hook if I need to. Fortunately, I've never had to do that because something got out of the cage.
Yeah.
However, I've got hooks positioned all over the place because my encounter with the mamba and my encounter with Elvis is you should never be out of arm's reach of a hook,
Yep.
even if it's a short hook. You should always have a hook nearby. There's, one there, one there, one there, one right here by my side. Wherever I can reach, I don't have to move my feet to get a hook.
Yeah.
And that's important.
To everybody who's watching, this is
giants that I have from Midwest. Those are the tools of last resort.
Yeah.
You know what we use those for? Pulling water dishes, because it puts a lot of distance between you and the cage. You would be surprised how far a 6-foot black mamba can reach about 4 feet out of the cage when the door is open.
Oh yeah.
So there's always
a both drops
away from the cage because of that. But you always want to have a hook handy in case of emergency. I mean, okay, so, a lot of the small snakes, we play snake hockey. Yep. Well, Lori and I devised a way to deal with that. The little babies don't hook well. So I got this block of foam that we can just pin them. I like that. Very gentle. You notice this is 12 inches. So your hands are far away from the pointy end. And this way we can regain control of the snake without, playing snake hockey with it or having to use tongs. Yep. The tongs, if you watch Dancing with Death, I brought the tongs into play. That was the only way I was going to survive that, because that snake was definitely going to kill me in any way, shape, or form. So it's the only time I've ever had to defend myself with a hook by actually hitting the snake. My animals are very precious to me. Hurting my animals is the last thing on the planet I ever think of doing. But that snake was going to kill me, or I was going to have to kill it. And I didn't really want to do that either. But 2 good whacks with a regular hook caused it to stop its advance on me, and it started to go the other way. And then I grabbed it with the gentle giants. So those are the tools of the last resort. And the doomsday weapon is also on the door, and that's a machete.
Ah, okay.
If I need to take somebody's head off to save myself or prevent an animal from escaping, I have that handy.
Yeah.
Firearm. Shooting the firearms in a house is just not a good idea.
Yeah, no bueno, especially upstairs to downstairs. Not a good idea. So,
exactly. But fortunately, I've these sort of things I've never had to do, and those are last resort. If you have a good plan, you discuss what you're going to do with your teammate when you're going to do it, and you have a backup plan if things don't go the way as you originally planned. You've done the best job that you possibly can. You can't possibly outthink every contingency, because the snakes are thinking beings, and they operate on a different level than humans do. So you try to compensate by discussing what you're going to do, having a backup plan for that, and then coming up with innovative techniques to work with an animal. Like, the baby Trymosaurus, they don't, they're very small. They eat little tiny frogs in the wild, or invertebrates and stuff. And you know how tough it is to get that sort of feedstock. So the baby Trymosaurus, I cannula feed with the same sort of mixture that Jack Vicente in Florida does with the chicken baby food with some vitamins and Pedialyte.
Jack's right down the road from us.
Yeah, Jack's a great guy. I've known Jack for a long time. So we have to restrain the animal, and the gentlest way to restrain those little babies is this piece of foam. And this way I can get a hook behind its head and pin it properly, feed the cannula down, and go ahead and give them their meal. Now, I've been to Jack's facility and I've watched him extract from coral snakes and stuff. And he just does the Bill Haas technique. The little coral snake, he's got it sort of, by the tail, it's trying to cruise away. He just grabs it, and it's like, okay, that works for you, but I'm sorry, I don't do that unless, like I said, unless Elvis is coming at my face. I don't put my hands around snake's head, and unless they've been properly restrained first. Just for me, a little bit unnerving, and I'm a little bit difficult to get on nerve, but again, you don't want to take unnecessary risks, especially now with COVID, because my friends, Dr. Spencer, who's an ER doc and medical toxicologist on my National Snakebite Support Service on Facebook.
Yeah, Dr. Green was on the show 2 episodes ago.
Okay.
I love Spencer.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and probably if you were looking to get your own BBIND number and you couldn't get your own doctor to sign it, and you were serious, you might discuss that with him, because he might sign off on it for you.
So
I'm not putting words in his mouth, but
no, for sure.
He believes that responsible keepers should have their antivenom, and I've discussed this with him several times, and I said, there are people that really would like to get it, but they can't get their own personal physician to sign off. And he said, well, I would have to know the person before I would do that. But I think I know enough docs now that we could probably get you taken care of if you needed that signed off on.
Yes, he actually introduced me to Dr. Bernstein here in Florida. He is the South Florida toxicologist that mans the poison control line. So he knows it. And I've met Ben, and actually had dinner with both Spencer, Ben, Cody. There was a bunch of us. We had a great time. It was last Gainesville, the Venomous Symposium.
Yes, I was there also.
Yep. Yeah, Cody told me, as I didn't get to go because of my work schedule, but I made it out there. He called me up and said, hey, dinner tonight, you need to be here. And I was like, dude, I'm like 2 hours from home and like another hour from you. I'm on my way. And I raced home, got changed, and raced there just so I could go to dinner with him. So, it's fantastic to meet some of these great people. I wanted to touch on something we'll go back a little bit to the Bothrops. So for those people that think that, I hear people say all the time, oh, I want to get a Bothrops. I want to get a Bothrops. I want a Bothrops. Well, let me explain something to you. I worked with Cody for a solid year, and I went every Saturday. I was usually there from 7:30, 8:30 in the morning till 4, 5, 6 o'clock at night. I did that weekly. I put the time in, I put the effort in, I never said no. I always followed every direction he gave. He's a fantastic mentor, very meticulous. One animal, well, 2, because there's a Mugini and then the Asper, that I did not work for the first whole year were both of those Bothrops, because they scared me to death. Every time Cody opens those cages, and he has the reptilia cages, the white plastic ones from he's in Ohio. Oh, killing me. I forget his name, but they're plexiglass opening down. So Cody told me, here's what you do. You put the 40-inch hook up against it. It's unlocked. It's unlatched. You slowly come back. And I watched that Asper come 5 foot. That snake is between 6 and 7 feet. Come 5 foot out of that cage like a bull and pull back. And once it realized that there was no food or anything, it was fine. But man, it was a good solid year before I would do anything with those snakes because they deserve that respect.
Yeah, I have 12 species of Bothrops here at the house. And, I've got Mambas, Taipans, I've got Mulga snakes. They're all easy compared to the Bothrops.
Yeah.
The Bothrops are really, really very dangerous snakes.
Yeah.
On top of just having very long fangs and a foul disposition, they're also pit vipers. So they have that added extra sense that helps them target their bite. I've had David Kundle here from Lehigh University. Look up his work. He's done high-speed imaging of pit vipers biting live rodents and how they target using their heat sensors. I've had David here, and we've set up his high-speed cameras, him and his wife, at my facility, and they've done videos of my snakes eating live mice, which I generally don't do. All my animals eat mostly frozen thawed, but yeah, I mean, this is how strict, and how touchy places are. He's no longer allowed at a university to keep venomous snakes in his laboratory anymore because of the fear that someone is going to get bit and there's going to be a lawsuit. So he relies on me in my collection to continue some of his research. So that's why he's come here and we've filmed it. But look up David Kundle, Lehigh University.
For sure.
Done some amazing stuff. But pit vipers, especially the Bothrops, are holy terrors. Elvis is nothing, Gaboons are nothing, Taipans are nothing, Mambas are nothing. Bothrops are serious snakes.
Well, it was funny because somebody made the comment there that, hey, haven't you worked? Because I went and grabbed Cody and I said, hey, come on, I'm up to the Bothrops. You got to take care of these guys. And somebody was there and said, why don't you do it? And I'm like, nope, I just don't feel comfortable. At that point, I just didn't feel comfortable. I'd rather watch it enough times where I could learn. And they were like, dude, I worked an inland taipan, a coastal taipan, and a Papuan taipan, all three right in a row. And they're like, you work those, but you won't work that. And I was like, that is a totally different animal. Totally different.
Okay, so I'll go with this movie cliche, Clint Eastwood. A man needs to know his limitations.
That's right. That's right.
And that's absolute truth. There's certain things that I'm comfortable doing. Other things, it's like, nah, I'll pass. I'll just not go there. For me, it's all risk benefit.
Yep.
If the benefit is there, yeah, okay, I'll weigh it against the risk. The other reason, you just don't want to take a bite right now. So right now at our facility, because we would have to, go to an emergency room that is basically filled with sick COVID patients. Yep. Taking a bite is a bad idea. So we're at minimal handling here at my facility. Cages are not getting cleaned. They'll get spot cleaned. The snakes, of course, will get water and they will get fed, but nobody, for the most part, except the little babies that get cannula fed, come out of the cage. If I get nipped by a Trimenosaurus, it's not like getting nipped by a 6-foot Asper.
Yes. And that's something that I give you guys a ton of credit for. I just watched, I think it was your video from last week where you talk about not introducing anybody and not putting animals together for breeding. There's not very many keepers out there that understand what that means. And you guys COVID is a real thing. I was in the emergency room, unfortunately, 3 weeks ago for my back, and I will be honest with you, it's very scary and very unnerving. So
Yeah,
taking a
the
bite
Delta,
from something that you don't
Delta
know.
variant is far scarier than any snake in my room
Yes.
here.
Yes.
That will kill you, and at least for any of the snakes that I have in here, I have antivenom for. And that bite is treatable and probably survivable.
Yeah.
COVID, yeah, probably, but I have age not working in my favor.
Yeah, diabetes, unfortunately.
I'm fully vaccinated, but
Same here.
to me, again, it's not worth the risk. The animals are fine. They don't want to be drug out of their cage anyway. So as long as they don't need any serious care, which none of them really do, they get to stay in their cage. I spot clean.
Yep.
We do it as a team. Water dishes come out with the Gentle Giants, get replaced. The doors close, stick put in place. End of story. Move on to the next animal.
Very uneventful.
See it, but every animal has an acquisition number.
Yep.
Has date of birth, sex, and also what cage it's in. I've got a database that I purchased many years ago. That once you enter the animals, it'll generate a feeding list for you. You can track the animal's health. In this way, I know who's in what particular cage, and I can pull by if I want to feed all the rat feeders at one time, so I know exactly how many rats to thaw, and I can just print the list off. So
we use Reptiscan.
Yeah, Cody had that. I mean, that was a great idea. This system will work with barcoding too, but
Okay.
I don't have a barcoder. But yeah, that's a good idea. And also, each cage is coded in our antivenom index,
Okay.
what antivenom is required for that particular snake in that cage. I haven't instituted it, but because we don't work alone in the rooms. But if you work in a room alone, basically you have a card with a clothespin that you clip your shirt.
Yep.
This way, if you go down and you're at least able to get the snake back in the cage, they know what bit you.
Yep.
Because you're wearing that card.
Same process the Denver Zoo uses. I had one of the keepers on, and that's the same thing they use. If somebody takes a bite, snake secured, card comes off, gets clipped to the shirt in case the person passes out. One side of the card is animal information. The other side of the card is the antivenom ID. They look at the card, they grab the antivenom, and off to the hospital.
Yep, exactly.
That's
You have to have a system when keeping venomous snakes. You have to be meticulous.
Yep.
Accidents do happen. For instance, sometimes you get a piece of substrate in the track of the glass, and sometimes you don't notice it. So there's a crack at the glass. This is why my wife will come in and check the room after I've been working in here with my assistant. She's like the gatekeeper that makes sure all the gates are closed.
Yep, exactly. And that's, again, it's a procedure. It's getting it done. It's keeping everybody safe. It's keeping the animals safe. It's keeping the keepers safe. I don't understand.
You keep the hobby safe.
Yes. And
it's the bottom line.
We gotta, so one of the things that I have on here, and I figure at this point it'd be good to get this out, and maybe we can wrap this up with this, because I think this is a good question. So I typed a list of questions for you because I usually don't do that. So you've literally answered all the questions without me asking, which is kind of cool.
Oh, okay.
One question that you were just alluding to is, all I put was, how can we be better? What can we do to be better?
Well, again, I've tossed this out, and I was one of the original members of the Southeastern Hot Herb Society with Chris Harper and Carl Betts, um, and we used to shepherd people out of the South Carolina show rather than them walking around with venomous snakes around the show. And, we put them in deli cups. I've seen people get bit by pit vipers through the little holes in the deli cups. So we would we would keep their animals at our table until they were ready to leave the facility, and then we would shepherd them out. But what we were going to do is we were going to basically put together a list of standards for the hobby. But the problem is that people thought they knew better than people who had been keeping for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
These new kids think that they know it all. And believe me, I was there as a kid once. That's how I got my timber bite. I knew it all.
Yep.
So I understand. But, age and experience does have its advantages. And, the younger generation could do better by listening to the experienced people in the field, like, Jim and Kristen at the Kentucky Reptile Zoo, Jack Facenti, George Van Horn. All these people will be very happy to help you do things safely and do it correctly. But, these kids don't want to listen to it because they already know it all and they have to learn the hard way, which right now is not a good way for the hobby.
Yeah. And some of them, I hate to say it this way, but some of them have taken bad bites and still just don't get it. They don't care. They think that it's not.
Oh yeah, I know a couple people in Florida that have taken bad bites and they're still at it.
Yep. The biggest I mean, Fish and Wildlife obviously just changed the laws down here, and we lost our CSP rights. I used to keep retics, and unfortunately, I saw the writing on the wall when they started to go after us. And I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna take my animals and send them off at this point, so that I don't have to deal with that. Hey, you got 90 days. Either get rid of them or we're coming for them. And the day that they were voting on that, this individual posted a picture of the finger that was pretty much gone. There was a nub that he had a baby blue Insularis wrapped around the same day they were voting on that. That was on Instagram. And I hate to tell people this, but Fish and Wildlife is watching, whether you want to believe it or not. All these pictures are being compiled, they're being put away. And in my honest opinion, and the opinion of others, they're just waiting. It's going to be one more big mistake, and that's it. We're all going to lose. They just proved that they can do it by taking away all these animals.
Yeah.
16 species or 14 or 16 species are now prohibited. The CSP permit worked for 10 years. No violations, no animals found in the Everglades that were tagged, pit tagged. Yet they just took everything away in one fell swoop. So
well, they can, because they're the state. They can outlawyer you any day of the week.
Yep, exactly.
So when Fish and Wildlife here in Pennsylvania came to the Hamburg show one year and said, all the vendors that had copperheads on the table had them confiscated, even though they were all they weren't northern copperheads. They were southerns, broadbands, Transpecos. They said categorically, if it's an Echistrodon contortix, it's illegal to keep in this state. They confiscated all the animals. And of course, all those animals were euthanized. But, people tried to fight it, but they lawyered them to death. There's no amount of money that you can raise to beat the state if the state wants to do something.
Exactly.
So, all right, hour and a half. So I think we're we should be pretty much through.
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to stop the recording and just hold on 1 second here. But everybody, Al's been on. Thanks, Al, for coming on. We really appreciate it. I'll get this posted. Put all the links and information to all your social media in there. And for all of you people that want to see the free handling and all that BS, go watch some of Al's videos. You'll actually learn real things. That's a fact.